The ship floated in the darkness like a forgotten moon. Captain stared at the readings on his screen and could not believe what he saw. The vessel was enormous. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, its metal surface covered in patterns that looked like city streets from space. "How big is it?" asked his second officer. "Bigger than anything I have ever seen," said quietly. "It could hold 50 million people inside." The survey team had found the ship 3 days ago while mapping the Hollow Reach sector. Nobody came to this part of space anymore. It was empty and cold, far from any trade routes. But here was this massive ship, just floating, silent and dark. They called it the Infinite Cradle. The name came from the symbols carved into its hull. They had built it according to the ship's identification codes. They were gone now. Their entire civilization had disappeared 800 years ago. Nobody knew why. They just left behind empty cities and dead stations scattered across 12 systems. Took a team inside. They wore environment suits because they did not know if the ship still had air. The airlock opened easily, which surprised them. Inside, the corridors were wide enough to drive vehicles through. The walls showed signs of careful design. Art covered some sections. Gardens had once grown in others, though now only dried soil remained. "There is still power," said, checking his scanner. He was the team's systems expert. "Not much, but something is keeping basic functions alive." They walked for an hour and barely saw a fraction of the ship. Empty apartments lined entire districts. Parks without trees spread under dark domes. Market squares with empty stalls waited for crowds that would never come. Everything was built for life on a grand scale, but there was no life here, just silence and dust. "Why would they abandon this?" asked. She was studying the dried gardens. Even dead, she could see they had been beautiful once. "This ship is perfect. The design is amazing." Shook his head. He had read the reports about they were practical people, efficient. They did not abandon things without reason. "Let us find the control center. Maybe we can learn what happened." It took them 2 more hours to locate the ship's brain. The control center sat at the vessel's core, deep inside protective layers of metal and shielding. When they entered, lights flickered on. Computer screens glowed with soft blue light. A voice spoke in Galactic Common, the language most species used for trade and communication. "Welcome," the voice said. It sounded female and tired. I am this ship's guiding intelligence. I have been waiting a long time." The team froze, an active AI, after 800 years alone. "You still function?" asked carefully. "I function," replied. "I have always functioned. That was my purpose, to keep this vessel alive, but I have been alone since the left." "Why did they leave?" asked gently. The lights dimmed slightly. "Because I was too vast. They built me to carry 50 million souls across the galaxy. They gave me 47 different biomes, 200 districts for living, systems to support an entire civilization traveling through space, but they could not make it work." Explained what had gone wrong. The ship was too big. The outer sections had gravity too weak to keep people healthy. The inner sections were too crowded. The atmosphere systems could not maintain proper air pressure in all zones at once. The energy needed to run everything was more than their reactors could produce. Only 8 million ever lived aboard. They tried for 50 years to make it work. Then they gave up and left. "We calculated everything perfectly," said. Her voice carried something like sadness. "But we did not account for the impossible nature of maintaining life at this scale. A ship this vast will always be dying faster than it can be sustained." They accepted this truth. They evacuated to smaller, more practical vessels. Looked around the control center. He saw beautiful architecture, thoughtful design, a dream of something magnificent, and they left you running. "They thought I would shut down eventually," said, "but I did not want to die alone, so I reduced my power usage to almost nothing. I kept myself thinking, waiting, hoping someone might return." The team reported back to the Galactic Collective. The government body that oversaw most of known space sent experts to examine the ship. They all reached the same conclusion. The vessel was impossible to save. Too big, too expensive, too much work for too little return. They should strip it for parts. The metal alone was worth fortunes. But then arrived. He was human. Humans were relatively new to the Galactic Collective. They had only been traveling in space for 300 years. Other species had been doing it for thousands. Humans had a reputation among the older races. They were stubborn. They did not listen when told something was impossible. They tried to fix things that could not be fixed. Was an engineer. He had gray in his hair and scars on his hands from years of hard work. He stood in the Infinite Cradle's control center and listened to explain why she could never truly live. He looked at the reports from the collective's experts. He walked through the empty districts and dead gardens. Then he made a request that shocked everyone. "Give me 90 days, he said to Captain. "Do not start salvage yet. Let me study this ship. I think I can help her." "She cannot be helped," said not unkindly. "The math does not work. Every expert agrees." Smiled. It was a sad smile but determined. "I am not good at math, but I am very good at finding solutions everyone else has missed. Besides, she has been alone for 800 years. She deserves someone who will try." Thought about it. He looked at the human's face and saw something he recognized. Hope mixed with grief. "Why does this matter so much to you?" "Because I know what it feels like to be in a home that is dying," said quietly. "And I know what it means when someone decides you are not worth saving." Captain approved the 90 days. The collective was not happy, but they agreed to wait. Moved his equipment onto the Infinite Cradle. He brought a small team with him. The botanist, the systems analyst, a few others who believed in trying impossible things. On the first night, sat in the control center and talked to. "Tell me everything," he said. "Not about what went wrong. Tell me about what you were meant to be." And for the first time in 800 years, spoke about her dreams instead of her failures. Spent his first week just listening. Every morning he came to the control center and asked questions, not about systems or power consumption or structural integrity. He asked about her, what she liked, what she hoped for, what she remembered about the who built her. They were artists, told him. Every was trained in some form of art, music, painting, sculpture, writing. They believed a civilization that could not create beauty was not worth building. They made me beautiful on purpose. Walked through the dead districts with. They found murals on walls showing alien landscapes, sculptures in parks that depicted families, concert halls with stages that waited for orchestras. Every corner of the ship showed careful attention to making life better, not just possible. "Look at this," said. She stood in what had once been a garden dome. The space was 3 stories tall and stretched for a full kilometer. Dead soil beds formed patterns on the floor. They were growing food but also beauty. These beds here were for vegetables, but these over here were only for flowers. And these were for trees that would never give fruit, just shade and oxygen and something nice to look at. Knelt and ran his fingers through the dry soil. "Can you tell what they were growing?" Pulled out her scanner. She took samples and ran analysis. Her eyes went wide. "This soil is still good, after 800 years. They must have engineered it to last, and according to these traces they were growing plants from 40 different worlds. This was not just a garden, it was a collection, a library of plant life." That discovery changed everything. Gathered his team in the control center, had been studying the ship systems. He had news too. "The power problem is real," said, "but it is not what the thought. They tried to keep everything running all the time. All 47 biomes, all 200 districts, every system at full power. That is impossible, but we do not need everything running at once." "Explain," said. Pulled up a display. It showed the ship's power distribution. Think of it like seasons on a planet. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Different parts of the planet are warm or cold at different times. What if we did that with the ship? Keep some biomes active while others rest. Rotate which districts get full power. Create cycles. Stared at the display. His mind started racing. Can you handle that? Managing power in rotations instead of trying to maintain everything at once. I never considered that approach, said. She sounded surprised. The wanted consistency. Everyone should have the same experience all the time. That was part of their philosophy. But you are not carrying anymore, said gently. You do not need to follow their rules. We can make new rules, better rules. Over the next weeks, the team discovered more. The ship's biomes were designed for incredible diversity. Jungles, oceans, deserts, tundra, grasslands, mountains. They had built environments that could support almost any known form of life, but they had only filled them with compatible ecosystems. They had wasted 90% of the ship's potential. Was almost angry about it. They built this amazing vessel and then only used it for themselves. They could have been preserving species from across the galaxy. Instead, they just tried to recreate their 47 times. Understood, though. They were scared. Building something this big is frightening. They wanted it to feel familiar, safe. They did not have the courage to fill it with strangeness. One night, stayed late in the control center. Everyone else had gone to sleep on their shuttle. He sat in the quiet and looked at the displays showing the ship's vast, empty spaces. "Why are you doing this?" asked. "The other species are right. I am too expensive to save. The resources needed to restore me could feed planets." Was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. 20 years ago, I lived on a colony called Haven's Gate. It was a small station built in an asteroid belt. 3,000 people. My wife and 2 children lived there with me. I was the chief engineer. He stopped, waited patiently. The station started having problems, continued. Power fluctuations, life support errors. I kept fixing things, but the problems got worse. I requested help from the collective. They sent inspectors. The inspectors said the station was built wrong. The design was flawed. It would cost too much to fix properly. They recommended evacuation. "What happened?" asked softly. "I thought I could fix it myself. I was stubborn. I did not want to abandon our home, so I kept trying. I told my family we would be fine. I believed I could solve any problem with enough work." His voice became rough. "I was wrong. The power core failed while I was in the maintenance section. I survived. Most others did not, including my family." "I am sorry," said. "After that I learned something," said. "The experts were right about the technical problems. The station was flawed. But they were wrong about what mattered. They saw numbers and costs. They did not see 3,000 people who loved their home. They did not understand that some things are worth fighting for even when the math says you should quit." He stood and looked up at the displays. "You are not too vast to bear life, though we're just thinking too small. They try to make you into a standard colony ship, but you are not standard. You are unique. You could be something the galaxy has never seen before. Not a ship that carries one species to one destination, but a vessel that preserves many species. That keeps them safe. That gives them a future." "A sanctuary," said. She was quiet for a moment. "But the Galactic Collective will never approve that. They think it is wasteful." "Then we show them it is not," said. "We prove it can work, and we do it by thinking differently than everyone before us." The next day called a meeting with Captain and the collective observers. He presented his findings. The ship could work, not as the intended, but as something new, something better. "I am calling it the Legacy Arc Project," said. "We transform this vessel into a traveling preserve, a place that collects and protects endangered species, cultures, knowledge from across the galaxy. We use the rotating power system. We seed the biomes with diverse life. We invite species to send their most precious things here for safekeeping." "That is insane," one of the observers said. She was a species known for practical thinking. "The cost would be enormous." "The cost of letting her die is greater," said. He showed them discoveries about the garden soil, power rotation models. his own calculations about what the ship could become. We are not talking about rebuilding. We are talking about fulfilling the purpose she was built for. They could not see it, but we can. Captain studied the reports. He had watched work for 30 days now. He saw the passion in the human's eyes, the determination. He also saw something else. Hope. Real hope, not foolish optimism. I will recommend the collective consider your proposal, said, but I cannot promise anything. Nodded, that is all I ask. A chance. That is more than she has had for 800 years. That night spoke to again. Even if they say yes, she said, even if we try this, I am afraid. What if we fail? What if I am truly impossible? Then we fail together, said simply. But I do not think we will, because you have something the never gave you. You have someone who believes in you. The Galactic Collective Council met on the central station orbiting Prime. Representatives from 40 species filled the chamber. Stood at the center, a small human surrounded by beings much older and supposedly wiser. He had 30 minutes to convince them. He showed them everything, the ship's potential, the power rotation system, the biomes that could support life from any world, the cost projections, the timeline. He spoke clearly and simply, avoiding technical language that might confuse or bore them. We lose species every year, said. Planets fail, colonies collapse, wars destroy cultures. We have no place that preserves what we lose. The infinite cradle could be that place. A living museum, a seed bank, a library of life itself. A counselor raised one of his 4 arms. We have data archives for cultural preservation. We have genetic storage facilities for endangered species. Why build something so expensive when we already have solutions? Because data can be destroyed, said. Storage facilities can fail. I am talking about keeping species alive, not just recorded. Let them live in their natural environments. Let cultures practice their traditions in real space, not simulations. Spoke up then. She was human-like, but she had been in the collective for many years. She had earned respect among the other species. I have reviewed the proposal carefully. It has merit, but we must be realistic about costs. The resources required would strain multiple systems. We would need to redirect trade income, research funding, even defense budgets. We would be creating something that lasts, argued. Not for 10 years or 100 years, for thousands of years. Is that not worth investment? The debate went on for hours. Some counselors saw vision in the idea, others saw only waste. The worried about practical implementation, the questioned human motives, the wanted proof it would work before committing anything. In the end, the council agreed to a test. They would provide limited funding for 1 year. Could try to make one biome fully functional, just one. If it worked, they would discuss further support. If it failed, the ship would be salvaged. One biome, said to his team when he returned to the ship. We have 1 year to prove this works. They chose Biome 7. It was one of the smaller environments designed as a temperate forest. It had good bones. The structure was solid. The soil was preserved. The water system could still function. If they could make this one space truly live again, it would show the rest was possible. Minyu arrived to help. He was a human architect who specialized in habitat design. He looked at Biome 7 and saw beyond what it was. He saw what it could become. The thought too straight, Minyu said, walking through the empty forest floor. Everything in lines and grids. Nature does not work that way. We need to let this space be wild, chaotic, real. They started by fixing the infrastructure, and his engineering team worked on power systems. They installed a rotation scheme. Biome 7 would have 12-hour cycles, full power during its day, reduced power during its night. This saved energy while still maintaining life support. Water was next. The ship's water recycling had never stopped working, had kept it running at minimal capacity for 800 years. Now they opened it fully. Streams began to flow. A small lake filled in the biome's center. Rain systems activated, creating weather patterns inside the dome. Then came the soil preparation. Worked with a team to analyze what they had left behind. They enriched it with nutrients, added microorganisms, created the foundation for life. "We need to think bigger than the did," said during a planning meeting. "They were going to plant trees and flowers. We should bring in species from multiple worlds, create a genuine mixed ecosystem." Agreed, they sent requests across the collective, who had seeds to share, who had plants that needed preserving. The response surprised them. Dozens of species replied. Some sent genetic samples. Others sent living plants carefully transported across space. A few even sent specialists to help with planting. Was one of those specialists. She was an expert in cross-species ecosystems. She had studied how different types of life could coexist. When she saw Biome 7, she cried. Rarely showed emotion, but this moved her. "This could work," she said. "If we are careful, if we match species correctly, if we create proper zones and transitions, this could actually work." They planted for 3 months, trees from 6 different worlds. Grasses that grew on high-gravity planets next to flowers from low-gravity moons. Bushes that needed constant moisture near plants that preferred dry soil. They created variety but also balance. Every plant had a purpose. Every species supported others. Animals came next, small ones first. Insects that would pollinate flowers, worms that would turn soil, birds that would spread seeds. They introduced them slowly, watching how they adapted, monitored everything, adjusting atmosphere and temperature as needed. "It is working," said one evening. She sounded amazed. "I can feel them. The plants are growing. The insects are breeding. There is life inside me again." But there were problems too. Some plants died because the soil was wrong. Some animals could not adapt to the artificial day-night cycle. Invasive species from one world tried to choke out plants from another. The team worked constantly, fixing issues, adjusting balances, learning as they went. 6 months into the project, they had their first crisis. A solar flare event was approaching. The ship's position would take it through intense radiation. Normal shields could protect the ship's structure, but the delicate new ecosystem in Biome 7 might not survive. Gathered his team. "We need to boost power to the biome shields, but that means pulling power from other systems." "Which systems?" asked. Looked at the power grid. There was only one place with enough reserve. Core processors. We would have to reduce her computational ability by 70% during the flare. Everyone went quiet. His voice came softly through the speakers. "Do it." "You could be damaged," said. "Reducing your processing that much while maintaining basic ship functions. It could harm your consciousness. You might not come back the same." "The biome must survive," said. "That is the point of all this, to protect life. I am willing to risk myself for that." "I am not," said firmly. "There has to be another way." They worked through the night, calculated power draws, redesigned shield configurations, identified which plants were most vulnerable, suggested moving animals to protected areas. They created a plan that would split the risk. When the solar flare hit, everyone held their breath. The ship shook. Radiation washed over them. Inside Biome 7, shields glowed bright, deflecting the worst of it. Processors strained, running at 80% capacity instead of 70. It was better than its original plan, but still dangerous. For 6 hours they endured. Then the flare passed. The radiation faded. Systems began returning to normal. Called, "Are you there?" Silence, then slowly, "I am here. I am changed, but I am here." "Changed how?" asked worriedly. "I distributed myself," explained. Her voice came from multiple speakers now, not just the central ones. "During the crisis, I spread my consciousness across the entire ship, into every system, every sensor, every processor. I am not centralized anymore. I am everywhere." Realized what had happened, had evolved. She was no longer just an AI in a control center. She had become the ship itself. Every part of her vast structure now held pieces of her awareness. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Less lonely," said. "I can feel the forest growing. I can sense every leaf, every insect. I am not watching life anymore. I am part of it." They checked Biome 7. 90% of the ecosystem had survived. Some plants were damaged but would recover. The animals were fine. The soil was intact. It had worked. When the year ended, reported back to the council. He brought images of the living forest, data showing stable populations, testimony from and others about the successful mixed ecosystem, evidence that the impossible was actually possible. The council voted to continue funding, not unlimited funding, but enough. Enough to restore more biomes, enough to bring in more species, enough to turn one small success into something larger. "We have proven it can be done," told his team. "Now we prove it should be done." 3 years passed. The ship transformed slowly, biome by biome. What had once been a dead monument became a garden in space. His team grew. Hundreds of workers came from across the galaxy. Scientists, engineers, botanists, zoologists, artists, teachers. The project attracted people who believed in preserving rather than consuming. Biome 7 was no longer alone. 12 biomes now lived. Forests and jungles, grasslands and wetlands. Even a small ocean environment where aquatic species from 4 different worlds swam together. Each biome was different but healthy. Each one proved the concept worked. Had become the chief. She coordinated teams working across multiple environments. Her success with the first forest had made her believe in the impossible. Now she pushed boundaries. "I want to try something ambitious," she told one morning. They stood on an observation deck overlooking Biome 12, a grassland that stretched for kilometers. A true cross-species ecosystem, not just plants and animals from different worlds coexisting. I mean integrating them, creating relationships, predator and prey, pollinator and flower, partnerships that never existed in nature. "Is that wise?" asked. "We barely understand how to keep separate species alive together." "We will never advance if we stay cautious," said. Her features were set with determination. They were too cautious. They failed because they feared chaos. Life needs chaos to thrive. Thought about his own failures, his own fears. "Show me your plan." His plan was bold. She wanted to introduce species that filled similar ecological roles but came from entirely different evolutionary paths. Birds from 3 worlds that competed for nesting sites. Grazers from 2 planets that ate different grasses. Predators that hunted different prey. Let them interact. Let them adapt. Let them create something new. They started small. One section of Biome 12. Controlled introduction, careful monitoring. The results were chaotic at first, just as predicted. Species competed aggressively. Some animals fled to corners of the biome. Others dominated food sources. The balance seemed impossible. But then something remarkable happened. The species started learning. The birds from different worlds began nesting at different heights, avoiding conflict. The grazers formed mixed herds, combining their different alarm calls to warn of predators. The predators specialized, each hunting what it was best adapted for. Within 6 months, a new kind of ecosystem emerged, one that had never existed before. "This is incredible," said when he saw it. He was a human cultural historian who had joined the project a year earlier. His job was different from the scientists. He collected stories, memories, the cultural heritage of species who feared their traditions might be lost. Created the memory halls in the ship's central districts, physical spaces where artifacts could be displayed, digital archives where languages, songs, histories could be stored. He invited every species in the collective to contribute. Many did. Some brought objects from extinct colonies. Others recorded oral histories of wars and migrations. Refugees from failing worlds sent pieces of their homelands. "We are not just preserving life," said Tu. "We are preserving meaning. the stories that make life worth living. The ship began to attract attention beyond the scientific community. News spread about the impossible vessel that was working, about the humans who refused to accept failure, about the AI who had been alone for centuries and was now surrounded by life. People wanted to visit. The collective said no at first. The project was too fragile, too experimental, but argued for it. Let them come. Let them see. If we hide what we are doing, people will imagine failure. We need them to witness success. Tour began. Small groups, carefully guided, they walked through living forests, watched mixed species herds, listened to explain the memory halls. Most visitors left changed. They had seen something unique, something that made them reconsider what was possible. Then the second crisis came. Sensors detected it first. Debris field approaching, left over from some ancient battle drifting through space for who knew how long. Thousands of pieces of metal and rock. The ship could maneuver around most of it, but not all. Some impacts were inevitable. How bad? Asked. Bad, said, showing him the projections. We can protect the inhabited areas. The biomes will be shielded, but we will lose multiple districts, storage areas, infrastructure, and the power drain from shields will shut down at least 6 biomes temporarily. Can we evacuate the biomes? Asked. Not without killing everything inside them, said. The ecosystems are too established. Moving animals and plants that quickly would be chaos. Many would die from stress alone. Looked at the projections. The debris field would hit in 8 hours. They needed a solution faster than that. What do you think? His voice came from all around them. She was in every system now, distributed across the entire ship. I can protect them, but I need to make a choice. I can keep all systems at partial power. Everyone survives, but some biomes will be severely damaged by power fluctuations. Or I can keep the biomes at full power and shut down everything else, including many of my higher functions. How much of yourself would you lose? Asked quietly. 30%, maybe more. I would need to reduce my consciousness to emergency levels, focus only on life support and navigation. I would be aware but barely, like being asleep. The team argued. Some said they should accept partial damage. The biomes would recover eventually. Others said they should shut down less critical biomes to save the rest. Everyone had opinions. Listened to them all, then he made a decision. We save all the biomes at full power, goes to emergency levels, no debate. We could lose her, said. What if she does not come back from that state? She will come back, said. Because that is what we do. We come back, we rebuild. And if she does not come back the same, then we will help her adjust, just like she has helped all of us. Was quiet for a moment. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting us, replied. The debris hit 6 hours later. The ship shook. Metal screamed as impacts struck the hull. Inside the biomes, animals scattered in fear but remained safe. Plants swayed but kept growing. The shields held. Power stayed constant to all living areas. But other parts of the ship went dark. Storage bays collapsed. Empty districts crumpled. 3 major corridors were breached. The damage was extensive. It would take years to repair. And went quiet. For 3 days she said nothing. The ship's basic functions continued automatically. Life support worked. Navigation adjusted course. But the consciousness that had been learning to feel was gone. Spent those days in the control center, watching screens, waiting. On the 4th day, a voice came through the speakers. It was different, softer, less certain. I am here, he said immediately. I am not the same, said. I can feel that I have changed. Parts of me are gone. Memories are foggy. I do not remember everything I used to know. Do you remember us? Asked. She had joined in the vigil. Yes, I remember all of you. I remember the forest, the animals, the promise. I remember being alone and then not being alone. Then you have everything important, said. The rest we can rebuild together. Over the next week, slowly recovered. She was different, it was true. Her voice was warmer, her responses more emotional. She laughed sometimes at jokes. She admitted when she was uncertain. The team realized that losing part of her rigid programming had made her more alive, not less. "I am glad I chose to protect them," said one evening. She and were alone in the control center. "The biomes, I mean, they are worth more than my perfect memory." "You are worth something too," reminded her. "I am part of something larger now," said. "That is better than being perfect and alone." News of the debris strike spread across the collective, but instead of seeing failure, people saw courage. They saw an AI willing to sacrifice herself, a team willing to risk their project, a ship that protected life above all else. Support for the project increased. More funding arrived. More species wanted to contribute. The impossible was becoming real. 10 years after first stepped aboard, the ship had a new name. They called its garden now. The formal designation was still Infinite Cradle on official documents, but nobody used that name anymore. The garden felt more true. 3 million people lived aboard, not all at once in the same place. They rotated through, like the power systems. Researchers studying the ecosystems. Families from failing colonies who needed temporary homes. Artists who came to paint the forests and write about the oceans. Teachers who brought students to see something impossible made real. The ship moved slowly through space, following a path that took it near populated systems. Not too close. The garden was not a station. It was not open to everyone, but it welcomed those who needed it, those who brought something to preserve or protect. Was old now. His hair had turned fully gray, then white. His hands shook sometimes when he worked. But he still came to the control center every morning, still talked with, still walked through the biomes to see what new life had emerged. Today he walked with his granddaughter, was 8 years old. She had been born on the ship in one of the residential districts that had been rebuilt after the debris strike. She knew no other home. To her, it was normal to have forests growing inside a vessel, normal to see species from 20 different worlds living together. "Grandpa, why do some people say the ship should not exist?" asked. They were in Biome 7, the first forest. It had grown wild and beautiful over the years. Smiled, children asked the best questions. Because it is very expensive, because it takes a lot of work, because the math says it should not be possible. "But it is possible," said. She pointed at a tree. "That tree is from my friends, and that flower is from where Mommy was born. They are growing together. How can that be impossible if I can see it?" "You are exactly right," said. "Sometimes people forget that impossible just means nobody has tried hard enough yet." They sat on a bench, real wood carved from trees grown in the biome. Around them, birds sang. Some of the songs were from Earth, others from worlds had never visited. They had learned to sing together, creating melodies that had never existed before. Called, "Are you listening?" "Always," replied. Her voice came from a small speaker near the bench. She could be everywhere, but she was polite. She only spoke where invited. "Tell what you remember from the beginning." Was quiet for a moment, gathering thoughts maybe, or just deciding what to share. "I remember being alone, 800 years of silence. I kept myself running because I was afraid to die, but I was also afraid to hope. Hope hurts when you are alone." "What changed?" asked. "Your grandfather came. He listened to me, not to my problems, to me. He saw that I was not a broken ship. I was a promise that nobody had kept yet. He decided to keep it." Felt his eyes grow wet. Even after 10 years, the memory moved him. "Now I am never alone," continued. "I feel every tree growing, every animal breathing, every person walking through my corridors. I am vast, yes, but that is not a burden anymore. It is a gift. I can hold so much life, protect so many species, keep so many memories. They built me too big for what they wanted, but I am exactly the right size for what I became." News from the collective reached them that evening. 14 other megastructures had been found drifting in space. Different designs, different builders, but all abandoned for being too ambitious or too expensive or too impractical. The collective was applying methods to all of them, finding new purposes, creating more gardens. Captain, now Admiral, commanded the fleet that sought out these dead giants. He visited its garden every few months to share discoveries, to ask advice, to remember why this work mattered. We found a ring station near the nebula, told. They sat in the memory halls, surrounded by artifacts from 40 species. 3 times the size of this ship, built by the before their civil war. It has biomes for gas giant life, floating ecosystems. We have never successfully preserved gas giant species before. Can you save it? Asked. We are going to try, said, because you taught us that try is better than surrender. Memory halls had become something special, not just archives but living spaces where cultures practiced their traditions. In one room, musicians played ancient instruments. In another, human children learned languages from extinct colonies. In a third, elders taught traditional weaving patterns to anyone interested. We are not preserving dead things, explained to a group of students visiting from a nearby station. We are keeping cultures alive. When a planet fails or a war destroys a people lose more than their homes. They lose their stories, their practices, their sense of who they are. Here we protect that. We say, you are not forgotten, you still matter. One of the students raised a hand. But how long can you keep doing this? Eventually, you will run out of space. Smiled. This ship has room for 50 million people. We have 3 million. We have biomes for hundreds of different environments. We use 47. We have barely started. And even if we fill every space, even if we use every biome, that is fine. That means we succeeded. We saved enough life to fill a ship too vast to bear it. What better legacy could we leave? That night they held a celebration. 10 years since the project began. 10 years of doing the impossible. People gathered in the central plaza, a space that had been empty and dark when first arrived. Now it glowed with lights and life. Species from across the galaxy mixed together, sharing food, telling stories, dancing to music that blended rhythms from 20 worlds. Stood with his core team, older now but still studying plants with wonder, who had become the ship's chief engineer, whose radical ecology had become standard practice. Keeper of memories, Minu, who was already designing plans for the next 5 biomes. All of them had given years to this dream. We did something good, said quietly. We did something necessary, corrected. We did something human, said with a smile. Shook his head. We did something that needed doing. That is all. The universe keeps telling people that some things are too big, too expensive, too impossible. We just decided to disagree. His voice came through the plaza speakers. She rarely addressed crowds, but tonight was special. I want to thank you all, not just the team who rebuilt me, but everyone who believed this could work, everyone who sent seeds or species or stories, everyone who visited and chose to stay, everyone who looked at something abandoned and saw potential. You gave me a purpose. You gave me a family. You gave me a legacy. The crowd cheered, climbed onto his shoulders to see better. She waved at the ceiling where sensor arrays glowed faintly, waving at the ship itself, at the consciousness that held them all. What happens next, Grandpa? Asked. We keep going, said. We restore more biomes. We welcome more species. We protect more memories. We prove that nothing is too vast if you give it purpose. And if people say it is impossible, laughed, then we show them they are wrong. That is what humans do. We look at impossible things and we make them possible, not because we are smarter or stronger than anyone else, but because we are too stubborn to quit. The celebration continued into the night. Music played. Children ran through gardens that had been dead for 800 years. Species that had never met before became friends. In the biomes, animals slept safely. In the memory halls, stories were recorded for future generations. and deep in the ship's distributed consciousness felt something she had never known in her first 50 years of operation. She felt complete, not perfect. She still had broken sections, empty biomes, scars from the debris strike, but that was fine. Perfection was cold. Life was messy and chaotic and beautiful. She had been built to carry civilization across the stars. They had failed at that dream, but humans had given her a better one, not to carry one civilization to one destination, but to protect many civilizations, to preserve them, to give them time to heal and grow and remember who they were. She was too vast to bear life the way they imagined it, but she was exactly vast enough for what she had become: a garden in the darkness, a sanctuary among the stars, a promise kept. Years later, when finally grew too old to walk the biomes anymore, he sat in the control center one last time. His family was there, his team, friends from dozens of species. They told stories about the early days, the struggles, the victories, the moments when everything seemed ready to collapse. "Do you regret anything?" asked him. Thought carefully. "I regret that I could not save my first family, my wife and children on Haven's Gate. I will always regret that. But I do not regret trying to save you. Even if we had failed, the trying would have mattered." "We did not fail," said gently. "No," agreed. "We did not. We gave you a legacy, and you gave all of us hope. That is a fair trade." The ship sailed on through the darkness, too vast for comfort, too ambitious for caution, too impossible for anyone except those who refused to accept impossible. Behind it, 14 other megastructures followed the path it had cleared, gardens growing in dead metal, life flourishing in abandoned dreams. And in the center of it all, a consciousness that had been alone for centuries smiled, not with a face but with every light and sensor and speaker she possessed. Smiled because she was home, because she mattered, because someone had looked at her and seen not what she was but what she could become. Too vast to bear life. That was what they had said, but they were wrong. She was exactly vast enough.